There is a difference between owning something and mastering it. I think you will agree. Now, you may own a skateboard, but that doesn't really mean that you truly know the sport. Considering the fact that almost everyone today is a camera owner, that does not necessarily mean that one is good at the art. There is a difference between owning a camera and be really good at taking pictures that stand out. The most important parts of photography are purely non-technical, including subject, composition, lighting, mood, storytelling, posing, timing, and emotion. However, most people get stuck on the technical aspects and specifically camera settings. So you've bought your first DSLR camera and you're very eager to start DSLR photography, but don't really know where to start or what to do with your camera, or what do all these buttons are meant for, what are these settings meant for. Fortunately, learning to be a good photographer is easier today than it has ever been. Today's camera has become more than just being a camera. It's become intelligent. The auto modes available today are in fact fantastic tools to get you started with your new DSLR camera. I'll be covering all the DSLR basics here. I'll be using my Nikon camera, but don't worry if you're using a Canon or a different brand though. The terminology might vary, but the concepts remain the same. I'll try to cover them as much as possible, but still feel free to just check your manual which came with your camera to see how things are called in your camera. Now, I'm going to start off by walking you through the different parts of the camera. Next, I'll go over some basic but highly important concepts related to manual photography. That is the exposure basics. And this is where you start to take control of your camera and move over that auto mode. I'll be discussing about the crop factor of the camera and why is it so important to understand and how can it affect your pictures. Next, I get into things like the focal length, the depth of field, aperture, shutter speed, ISO, exposure triangle, histogram, white balance, focus and its various modes, and the metering modes. Now, you will continue to use and develop upon these skills throughout the rest of your photographic journey. And I understand that theory becomes overbearing and tedious very quickly. So once your camera is configured, I will be asking you to move out and do some quick assignments. Now, I'm assuming that you are an absolute beginner, somebody who has non-technical understanding of the process of taking pictures. The absolute beginner who is interested in getting serious about the art of photography. So let's begin with the basics of the camera and its parts. Memory cards. These small devices are killer, don't you think? Anyway, memory cards are the storage devices that safeguard your pictures and your videos and all sorts of data. All right. So memory cards do come in a lot of variants, and there is a lot of confusion around like which card should I buy or which one is the best. There is another one like should I consider SD or should I consider CF, or in the first place, what is the difference between the both? Now, I'm going to answer all of these questions and even provide you my recommendations about some of the budget memory cards and some of the expensive ones also. So you can simply click on that link and go shopping. This video is going to be highly important for you. So I recommend that you watch it till the end because I have some highly unignorable concepts about memory cards. So essentially there are three SD formats: SDXC, SDHC, and SD. SD stands for Secure Digital Cards, and they are the oldest and the least used SDHC, which is the high capacity end, these can store up to 32 GB of data. While the SDXC, which stand for extended capacity, these cards can store up to 2 terabytes or around 2000 GB, which is massive. Now, if you shoot video, you will most likely need an SDXC card, which is the extended capacity. And it is also the newest type and has the maximum capacity of about 2 TB, like I said. And I guess bigger is better. So if you're shooting video, you might want to consider between one of them. So what I feel is that storage comes in cheap these days. So there is no reason why not to shoot at the best quality that you can and simply carry a bunch of cards. These cards, they come in all kinds of different formats. Most cameras these days use either compact flash, also known as or referred to as the CF cards, or the secure digital, the SD cards. Now, SD cards come in a micro format also, which the tiny cameras and the cell phones often use. Now, your main concern when choosing a card and what to buy largely depends on one decision, whether you want to choose between capacity or the speed. Now, buy the largest capacity that you can afford, and then you won't likely have to worry about cards anymore. As for speed, you don't necessarily have to buy the fastest card available out there. Now remember that media cards like these, they are not only used for still shooting, they are also being used for video recording, audio recording, and some other functions. A super fast card may not get you any advantage because your camera may not be able to write fast enough to that fast card so that it may be able to take advantage of it. Also, if you don't intend to shoot video, or if you only intend to shoot HD videos, for example, then you may not need the fastest card out there. Faster cards are more expensive. So if you don't need the speed, it would be better to save your money or put it into more capacity. If, however, you plan on shooting sports or maybe some stage performances or something like that, then you might need to shoot bursts of images. Then the card speed becomes important. But again, your camera won't necessarily be able to take advantage of the fastest cards available. So you might want to do some experimentation and some research to figure out what the best option is for your specific camera. Now, on your DSLR camera, you would have a memory card compartment somewhere. Just open that up, take out that memory card, and read out the specs. And share those specifications of your memory cards in the comments here, and any questions that you may have for me. However, I am going to try and answer a lot of frequently asked questions that get asked all the time. Number one out of them is, can a micro SD card be used in a DSLR? Indeed, why not? With an SD adapter, it is possible. However, I recommend using a high-speed micro SD card only. Since camera writes a huge amount of data to the card, a slow card will severely affect the performance. Next, let's look at the battery. Now, your camera needs power, of course, and that power comes from the rechargeable batteries. Now, for the most part, this is something that you won't have to worry about too much because the camera batteries typically last a very long time. That said, it's still important to check your camera's remaining charge before you head out on a shoot. If you plan on being out for many days of shooting and you have a slight idea that you may or may not have access to power, then you will want to carry multiple batteries. Now, vendors will tell you that third-party batteries might damage your camera, but honestly, I have never found that to be the case. Third-party batteries don't necessarily last as long as the camera vendor's batteries, but they are significantly cheaper. So it's easy to buy enough to make up for the difference in the capacity. Click on the links that I have shared in the video description. I recommend some good and some not so expensive ones too. The camera's LCD screen is one of the biggest power hogs. Built-in Wi-Fi, if your camera has, that is another one. As your battery gets close to dying out, or if you want to be sure that it will last as long as possible, then use those features as little as possible. From your camera's menu, you can probably turn down the brightness of the camera's LCD screen, and that will use less power. As you use your camera more and more, you're going to get a feel for how many shots you can expect to get from a single battery charge. Next up is the diopter. A camera diopter is an optical tool that adjusts your camera's viewfinder to suit your eyes. You can adjust it on your camera by simply rotating the dial. In most of the cameras, the diopter wheel is located right next to the viewfinder itself. It has a plus and a minus sign on it. Now, in essence, the diopter adjustment knob works as a lens switching from near to far focus. That device has lenses of various concave and convex curves to adjust for the nearsightedness or farsightedness. They adjust for an eye that can't focus at a reasonable distance. The diopter adjusts only the clarity of the reflection from that prism and does not focus the captured image itself. Today, virtually all cameras with physical viewfinders have some type of diopter adjustment so that you can compensate for your own unique vision. It's basically meant for people who wear specs. Next, let's look at how to detach and attach a lens. The procedure is very straightforward. The first step is to be sure that your camera is off when removing or exchanging the lenses. Next, remove the camera body cap, then remove the rear lens cap. Next, align the mounting marks, usually a white or a red dot, with the mounting marks on the camera. Then rotate the lens as shown until it clicks into place. Be sure to remove the lens cap before taking pictures. People kind of ignore it sometimes. Okay, so have you realized how people get into all these fancy, adventurous, dynamically awkward looking positions when shooting with a camera? This is one of my favorite topics. That is, how do you hold your camera? And I so wanted to talk about this to you. I've seen people holding cameras in all kinds of awkward ways. I admit it. I hate it. I absolutely hate it. Let me show you few ways of holding your camera. Please get it right. Standard hold. Your right hand is the controlling hand for all the buttons available on the right side of your camera, and your left hand acts like the supporting hand. The camera body rests on your left palm. Alongside being only a supporting hand, use it to control everything that is in front of the camera body and on the left side of the body. Now, I've seen a lot of people adjusting the zoom and the focus from the top of the lens. Don't do it. Instead, do it from under. That will be much more convenient and less tiring. Tripod hold. Bring your elbows together and your legs should be at shoulder width. That's a minimum. So you get what I like to call a tripod hold. It's the most stable hold while holding the camera in a standing position. Every camera manufacturer provides a camera strap, and that too with their branding on it. Although, like many other pro photographers, even I don't like showing off what camera brand or model I'm on. Because frankly, it's nobody's business as to what I have in my hands, right? However, there are some flashy and some very attractive camera straps out there, like these ones. And if you're interested in checking them out, go ahead and click on the links that I provide in the video description. And those links will take you straight to these fancy camera straps. At the end of the day, what matters is what I am able to do with a particular equipment. And as you may have guessed by now, there is a right way and a wrong way to use the strap too. Let's see. If you see here, the camera is pointing outwards and runs the risk of banging into walls, people, structures, etc. Not very safe. However, if we turn the camera inward like this, then it suspends right next to your body. Also, if you notice, the lens is parallel to the body, which means the camera and the lens, they both are quite safe. Also, your clicking finger naturally lands on the shutter release button, and therefore the camera is literally ready to go. Also, if you are using a strap, wrap the strap onto your hand for more security of your camera. Don't keep the camera hanging around your neck like tourists. It's going to sprain your neck very quickly. Instead, get into a habit of using your shoulder, as shoulders are much stronger than our necks. Alternatively, you could use these options too for efficient handling of your camera. Again, I'll be providing the links in the description so you can check them out at your own ease. Next is, how do you go about positioning yourself to shoot great pictures? When you want to shoot in a portrait orientation, that is the vertical orientation, keep in mind that the shutter release button should be approximately in front of your right eye instead of being in front of the nose. Let's see what that means. Don't lean back, instead, move back. You don't become a good photographer by showing off how adventurous you can get when you're shooting. Let your pictures do the talking for you. Although people watching you shoot may get an impression what an incredible shooter you are, but trust me, it doesn't work. It's better to shoot in a stable, balanced position rather than doing all that monkey dance. Don't hunch. Instead, get down on your knees or on your belly. Hunching is always going to hurt your back and give you shaky results in your pictures. Much stable. Right now, the most important thing is for you to internalize and develop these critical habits that will be the foundation of your shooting for the rest of your photographic life. Half pressing the shutter button. That must become instinct. No more missed shots because you didn't pre-focus and meter. Second, you have to stay aware of the shutter speed. You don't have to look at it on every shot, only when the light has changed in a way that might impact the shutter speed. Third, you have to experiment. You've got to reframe your pictures. Photographs are found as much as they are taken or made. As much as you may think you know where the best shot is, it's very possible that there is a better one that will reveal itself once you start moving around. Fourth, stop chimping around. What is chimping, you may ask? Well, chimping is when you take a picture and then, look at that, what a picture I took. You do that. Don't do that. So you may be wondering, why is it called chimping? What I just did, that's chimping. So don't be a chimp. Now look, you clearly want to be able to look at the back of your camera every once in a while. Make sure that you are nailing the focus. Make sure that the exposure is correct. The colors look the way you expect them to look. But just take a look at a few of your shots. Don't look at every single one. Make sure that your settings are dialed in and then just forget about it.